Final Fantasy. This is going to be like 100 Final Fantasy 14 things, and will have no idea what they are. Final Fantasy 10 and 10-2 characters. This is specific. Various JRPG protagonists. Final Fantasy 10 characters. What are we ranking them on, though? Like, what is our, like, deciding factor? Whether they're cool or not? Whether they're, like, an asshole or not? Like, that's what we're ranking them on, I guess, is it? I'm guessing that's what we're ranking them on. Like, it's like, there's no, like, one single, from good to bad, whether they're a good person or not. I think we can manage that. Okay, good to bad, like good to bad in a very kind of like blanket sort of way. Personality is a good one. I like the idea of that. So personality, whether they have a good personality or not. I think we can go with that. Riku is the S tier personality, very clearly. Like, I don't think there's, like, she just has I think she has the balance right. I think she's like one of those characters, a little bit like Vanille in Final Fantasy 13, where she comes across as being like a little bit naive, but she's actually she's situationally extremely intelligent. Like, she sees everything that's going on, she understands each of the characters, she knows people on an emotional and interpersonal level, and then she like reacts based on that. Like, she has the best personality, 100%. Then worst personality. Who has the worst personality? I'm very tempted to just say Jecht has the worst personality. It's like Waka, though, like, I don't know, like, Waka has a bad personality for me, too. Like, I don't know. Like, Seymour has a bad personality, but I think that's triggered by, like, the childhood trauma of his murder, of his mother, like, mother's death before his eyes and transforming into anima. But, like, then you could argue the same thing as Waka. Like, does Waka have a choice, given, like, the environment that he's after growing up in? Like, he's just the generic Spearin, like, I believe in Yevon, and I just follow whatever anybody tells me, and I hate the Albed. But he's like, can you really blame him when he's a product of that environment that he's after, like, growing up in? That's a hard one. The leader of the Ronso is like an A tier personality, I think. Is that like the Ronso leader from Gagazet, or is he like Father Kelk Ronso or whatever? The guy who's in the Jedi Council, the Council of Yevon or whatever. I don't know which one is which. We've got Sid here. I think Sid has like an A grade personality to a certain extent, or what we know of him anyway. Like, he'd do anything for Yuna. So I think he belongs up there. I think Lulu has the A grade personality as well, like almost going into S. I'll put her in A for the time being. You belong in F. Because, like, no matter what happens, you are just a foolish, stupid bitch for the entire game. Like, the only time you do anything to help us is when you don't even know that you're helping us. So, like, I just... You're awful. I hate you. Shalinda is a fool. Even her name is foolish. It's like Shalinda. It's like, I hate her. Oren has like the S personality or the A. Do you want to know what to decide? What makes me bump Oren into S? Like, there is one moment, like, Oren would be the A personality, but what puts him on the same level as Riku for me is, like, that one moment where this guy, Elmer Fudd, when he gets killed, and even though he's a bad guy, Oren is like, Oren is like, he was my friend. Now you're going to, like, even though he, like, Oren's like, even though he had strayed and even though he became a bad person, at the core he was my friend, kind of a thing. So he definitely needs, like, the S grade personality, because he makes his own mind up. Yeah, Keenock was my friend. Remember, he says that. He says Keenock was my friend. Like, I think because, like, that's so, like, that one moment just, like, shows that Oren just makes up his own mind. Like, I think Oren is like, he's after, obviously he has the benefit of having, like, come out this other side of the whole like, final Aeon thing, and he's seen it all, warts and all. So he goes from being like a believing monk of Yevon, or whatever, a pious monk of Yevon, to making up his own mind. So he has the more benefit of hindsight to anyone else, because, like, I feel like Oren and Waka could be the same person, except Waka hasn't had that opportunity of growth that Oren has. But, like, since Oren is already at that level, he is the S grade personality. So Yuna, S or A? Again, I think Yuna, without having grown as a person, she would be slightly lower than A. But I think because of the way that she, like, Yuna carries the world on her shoulders for the entire game, and she doesn't crack. And then she even, like, what I like about Yuna's personality is that even when even though she's devoted her whole life to this one thing, more so than Waka. So, like, this is the thing, like, Waka is a good one to measure people off of, I think, because, again, he's like the Spira everyman. Like, Yuna, even though she has devoted her entire reason of living and her existence to being a high summoner and summoning the final Aeon and defeating sin, and that's her entire reason for being, she is able to see what is truly happening and change her course and exercise free will faster than Waka is. So like, I think that is worth a lot. Like, she is far more, even though, like, on the one hand she has more, she needs to sacrifice more, she is able to do it more easily than Waka is able to do it. I think that says a lot about her personality, so that's why she belongs definitely in A, potentially in S. So, and yeah, she, like, I think she is the protagonist. Like, I think even though Titus, like, tells the story, I think at the end of the day the story is about Yuna. And I think that's shown at the end, like, but at the end of the game, spoilers if you haven't played it before, but at the end of the game, Yuna owns the story. And I think that is, like, the I think that, like, says an awful lot. So she definitely belongs in A. I don't think she's on the same level personality wise as Riku or Oren, but she's definitely up there. I'm just turning on a lamp because it's starting to get dark. So, Chapu, is that Chapu, I think? Chapu is, like, a hard one because, in terms of personality, because I don't think we know enough about him. Like, I don't think we know enough about him in order to, like, really, in order to really make a judgment call on his personality. What we know about him is that he was prepared to give everything to defend Spira from sin. And we also know that he's not as blindly faithful as Waka, again with like using Waka as the measuring stick. The one like defining characteristic that we know about Chapu compared to Waka is that he was prepared to abandon his blind faith to protect Spira from sin, because he was prepared to use the ancient machina or whatever in the form of a firearm or whatever in defense of Spira. So I think in even though like Mayo says you only really know hearsay, you also know that Lulu loves him, and Lulu is a good judge of character. So those are the only two things that you know about him. I think that's enough to kind of make quite a good judgment on his character. He's probably a similar kind of character to Luzu and Gata or whatever, where they're prepared to kind of do whatever they need to do in order to protect Spira, and their blind faith is placed below that. They're more loyal to Spira than they are to Yevon, whereas I think Shalinda, the bitch that she is more loyal to Yevon than she is to anybody else. So I think that's why Chapu, even though we know little about him, we can discern that he would be somewhere in the B, probably. I'm gonna push him there. This is like my place where I am. Where do we put Waka? I think with Waka, he's a challenging one. I think it's very easy to say, like, for most of the game, he's a very narrow-minded racist. Like, let's just, like, call a spade a spade. Like, Waka is, like, a racist for the majority of the game. And, like, he's, like, just by they had to hide the fact that, like, and I think this says a lot, that, like, when Riku joined the party first, I had to hide the fact that she was an Albed from Waka because he's a racist. This is the thing that we have to remember about him. So that would land him squarely in the E, like, no matter who he is, that would rank him squarely in the E or F section, in that he's just like, he is so blinkered by, I do what I am told. I am loyal to the Church of Yevon. The Albed are bad. No matter what, I don't care. And he has to, like, almost be tricked into realizing that not all of the Albed are bad people. And it takes so long for him to actually come around. Again, way longer than even Yuna, who has more of a stake in this than Waka, or than him. It takes him so much longer to come around to this. However, throughout the course of the game, he does experience a similar realization to Oren. And I think when we put it that way, we're after saying that Oren is an S-grade personality. However, when we look at where Oren would have been before he realized that everything is a sham and they're all just being played like fools, we don't know, like, whether Oren might have been in a similar place to Waka, where he's like, the Albed are all scum and Yevon is the one true thing that we can believe in here. We just know Oren at a different point in his life. So I think we have to give Waka some credit for at least finally changing as a person. Like, he does change. However, that's not to the same extent that other characters do. So I think that brings Waka up to a D. Like, I think the fact that he does manage to change as a person and stop being a racist, like, I think that counts for something, and it means that he's not on the same level as a Shalinda or whatever, or even a Keenock. Like, I think Keenock belongs, like, somewhere down here as well, like in the E or D level. I think Keenock is an E, you know. Then like I think that's how Waka like comes up in the ranks a little bit, if you know what I mean. So that's where I'm at with Waka. Like I think Waka is probably the hardest one to place, but I think you have to like give him a fair trial is what I want to say on that. Like I think the only other character that's more like, look, there are some characters here that are difficult, right? Like I'm going like Seymour and Jecht are the only two that are left that are very difficult to kind of objectively judge. Like these two are going to be a challenge. Um and like the Aeons, I think the Aeons are kind of like I think look, let's put it this way. Well, no, you see, I think we can rank the Aeons on personality in terms of coolness, can't we? Like the Aeons ranking their personality is like the hot or not list, isn't it? So let's not just give them a free pass here right away. Well, this is Yevon, so Yevon is on the same level as Shalinda. Like that's you Yevon, isn't it? So um like we can rank the Aeons in terms of their coolness for sure. We might just do that now and get it out of the way. So who have we got here? We've got Bahamut. I'm not a fan of Bahamut. It's a big dragon. It looks like a Yu-Gi-Oh card. The animation is too long. Bahamut goes in the D level with Waka. Shiva is really cool design, really cool attack. Snaps her fingers and like you die. Shiva belongs like with Lulu. Like I think Shiva and Lulu have kind of similar energy going on there. Yojimbo is cool. Like I think Yojimbo is like somewhere up here as well, either A or B. There's just like that entrance where Yojimbo comes in and you have like the cherry blossoms and the dog is with him and all of this. Enkidu is the dog's name, isn't it? Like I think like Yojimbo definitely belongs somewhere up here. It's a hard one though. I'll put Yojimbo in B. Ixion is like S tier. Like if Shiva is A, this is like saying the same as like the Bill paradigm, right? The Bill from Pokemon paradigm. If Shiva is A, then it stands to reason that Ixion is S, because Ixion is like a big, strong, like cool looking badass motherfucker horse that like zaps lightning and is just amazing. Like Ixion belongs in S. Valve for, well no, that's Ifrit. That's Ifrit. Ifrit is like ugly. Belongs on the same level as Bahamut. The Magus sisters, like they're A tier. Like they're cool. Valfor is like C. It's like the meh Aeon. And Anima is also. I think I want to put Anima in the S tier. Anima is just really badass. Like if we're counting the Aeon's personalities as whether they're cool or not, like Anima is cool. So we've got like it's a couple of A's, a couple of S's. We got Yojimbo is in there too. We've got Valfor's on the C level, and then we've got Bahamut in there with Waka and Ifrit. So, who have we got left? I'm like leaving these two to last because I think they're hard. Belgamine is who this is. Belgamine is a really cool character that I like a lot. And I think you have to kind of like you have to like compare Belgamine as having like a similar role to Oren, where Belgamine has come out the other side and has realized that like that Spira are being played by like fools, so she dedicates her afterlife to supporting other people, or to trying. She wants Yuna to be able to end that. So I think you put like Belgamine on the A level here. She's cool. Who else have we got here? Yunalesca is kind of a difficult one to place too. these are the two other summoners that are kind of assholes, aren't they? Bartello is the servant guy. Got Titus up here. Things are getting serious now. It's not as cut and dry. Kimari, I think, is like a B or an A. Like, again, Kimari, you don't see much of Kimari's personality, but what you do see of Kimari's personality is loyalty, and I think that is worth an awful lot. Like, Kimari is ready to... Like, I think there's like a defining moment for me with Kimari is when they're escaping from Bevel. Like, Kimari is ready to just like have everybody else escape, and he knows that he would die if he was there on his own. He just is willing to lay it all down. Manages to conquer the other two Ronso assholes that bullied him in school. I think Kimari belongs as like an like since we don't see anything negative about Kimari during the game. Like I think that makes him be an S tier, an A tier character. Sorry, like similar to Belgamine, I guess. So now we've got these guys. This is like the evil Pope Yevon guy. Belongs here with Shalinda. Also a zombie, which is also not very positive. This is the Senator, like Chancellor Guado guy who's Seymour's lapdog. I think he's also a bad person because even though they knew, like, didn't they know that Seymour was after killing his dad at one point? So, but they didn't care. They were like, yeah, whatever. It's Lord Seymour. Like, we love him. So I think he's like an E grade personality because he's even worse than Waka. Waka is the measuring stick by which all men are measured. So I think he belongs down there. This is the other. Wait a second. Which no, that's Yuna's dad. That's Braska. Braska is a hard one because we don't like see very much of him. All we know about Braska is that he's like another high summoner who fought Sin with and managed to do the final summoning. And what we see from the videos with that Jekt and Oren make or whatever. But what we do know is that Oren, who we say Oren is a good judge of character, idolizes Braska and would lay down his life for him. And we also know that Braska seemed to be just like a good person, a good level-headed person who also took in Jekt and got Jekt to become less of an asshole. Like, I think that's worth quite a lot. Like, anyone who can make Jekt less of an asshole is doing good work. But I think it's hard to know very much more about him. Like, I think we have to put him in, like, the same group as, like, Chapu, you know, because he just thinks he's doing good things, and for all intents and purposes, he is, but, you know, we don't know much more about him than that. Brother is a good guy. Like, I think Brother is, like, definitely a solid A or B in terms of, like, personality. Like, I'm going to put Brother in B, I think. Again, it's, like, very difficult because we don't know very much about his personality. He's a good blitzball player. We know that. And he's a good pilot. I think Brother is like a solid B. B for Brother, B by name, B by nature. Oawaka. I have like a soft spot for Oawaka because I think, like, again, Oawaka has that loyalty thing going on that Kimari does, where, you know, he's kind of like a constant during the course of the game where you can always rely on him. He never forgets the he never forgets the how you helped him get his business established, and he always remembers that. And then again, the defining moment is that he ends up actually defending us to the point where he gets like arrested and whatever, you know. So I think like Waka or Oawaka is like definitely like a solid A personality there. Um, Similar with like your man who tells you about, like, I think he's a B, he just like he tells us the history of the place, whatever, he's a good guy. Nothing wrong with him. Nothing exceptional about him that we can really draw on. Um Donna and Bartello are difficult. Like, I think Bartello, like, if we're just like you said, Fury, he just loves Donna. Like, we have to kind of have to just like again give him a fair trial and just like think, okay, he's just a guy who's just like head over heels in love with this bitch, and he's just a bit of like he's a C or a B. I think he's just like an okay guy. Donna, I think, is like a bitch for most of the game, a little bit like Waka, and she doesn't really have a reason to be. That's what I kind of don't like. That's why she doesn't get a free pass, is because like Donna doesn't really have a reason to be as much of a bitch that she is to Yuna. Like, she's a rival, but whereas like he's also a rival, he's not as much of he's not as much of like an annoyance as she is. On the other hand, he does try to stand in your way and you have to actually fight him, which Donna never does. So I think he's like similar to Waka. He's like in a D sort of level, just like Donna. These Ronso assholes, like, again, they didn't have any reason to bully Kimari, but I guess, we're all young sometime. I think they redeemed themselves then at one point later on Mount Gagazet, and then all of the Ronso get slaughtered, so I'll give them a pass and put them in C here. And then we've got like these four characters. We've got Seymour, we've got Titus, we've got Jecht, and we've got Unaleska. Let me think here. Let me take a sip of my cocktail. So, like, of these, I'm going to rank them in terms of difficulty of how to define their personality. So, or how to, like, rank their personality. I think, like, Unaleska is easy-ish. Like, she turned her husband into the final Aeon. She knows that she also is like a horrific Medusa monster. And that definitely knocks her down a rank or two. I think for me, the defining characteristic of her is that she is in the know. She knows that the whole Sin final summoning thing is a sham, and that it's actually not what it's claimed to be, that Spira, they're all being taken for fools, and she wants that to continue. So I think that puts her in like the E category. There's something cool about her, she gets kind of cool points just because she's cool, but at the end of the day, she's a bad person. So like that like her coolness points don't bump her up too far in the ranks, if you know what I mean. So where are we now? Titus. I think Titus is like more complex like in terms of ranking his personality than we might think, because even though ostensibly on the surface level Titus is a good person, he's the hero of the game, I think Titus can have, like, this is the thing, like, his flaw is also the thing that makes him successful during the game, right? Because his flaw is that Titus sees things too simply, and he hasn't learned yet how to view the world as being like a very gray spectrum, or how to evaluate people and situations on a more nuanced level. He sees things in a very kind of black or white sort of immature sort of way, and immature in a worldly sort of sense, right? That being said, that while that is like ostensibly a negative characteristic, it is exactly that allows him to kind of get the conversation started amongst his core group, the party in Final Fantasy X, because he just kind of calls bullshit on things. Like, he just sees that when something doesn't make sense to him, he's just like, this is BS, you know? When he thinks that something is stupid, he's just like, that's a stupid thing. Whereas, like, nobody else in the game is even able to see stupid things for what they are, because he's coming from an outside. The combination of him coming in there as an outsider, as well as having this very sort of polarized way of evaluating things in the beginning, is what allows that conversation to start happening. And he just calls bullshit on stuff, sometimes too much, right? And he keeps doing it even though people are like, shut up, and Waka is like, you have to respect Yevon. He's like, I don't think I do have to respect Yevon just because, for no reason, you know? And he does that time and time again, instead of just saying, okay, well, I'm in Rome, I do as the Romans do. And I think that's an important characteristic, in that he kind of just sticks with things, you know? It's not always positive the whole way through the game. I think it causes him to be a little bit insensitive to Yuna's situation sometimes, because he oversimplifies the difficulty of the situation that she's in, and I think that kind of counts against him in terms of his personality, right? I don't know. It's like the so I think that again, the same thing that is his strength is also his weakness situationally. However, I think he belongs. I don't think he's in the same level as Yuna personality wise. Whether he's a B personality, I don't think so. Like, what I'm considering now is whether we push him into A and bump Yuna up to S, which is what I'm thinking right now, to be perfectly honest. Like, that's what I'm kind of considering. I think we push, or do we just push him in B? I think we push him in B, because he's just like, I think that there's enough kind of against him points to keep him in the B level. However, I think you have to be fair to him, that he brings a kind of a refreshing view and perspective into the Spearin group, which, if it weren't for him, so I think this is the thing that you have to, like, say in Titus's defense, is that if it was not for him, right? So if he had never come to Spira, and if his personality had never been injected into that group, then what would have happened is that Yuna and everyone just would have died, and the cycle would have continued over and over again. Like, he's the kind of blip on the radar that just, like, throws everything off in a very meaningful way, you know? So, and I think that it's only his sort of headstrong nature that does that, because if he wasn't that side of personality, even if he did come from outside into Spira, then he would have just caved to everyone telling him what to do. Like, if he was an outsider into Spira, and he was a weaker personality type, then what would have happened is he just would have gone along with everything that was happening and never would have questioned anything. So I think that, like, that's why I'm still on the fence about whether you bump him up, because I think that's a very strong personality trait, to kind of just have conviction in being able to speak out against things. You know, how many of us actually ever speak out against an entire system in a meaningful way and in an impactful way? Like, very few people, but he does that all the time, even though he knows that that's not the easy thing to do. So, like, I think that's why, if I'm trying to be fair, I'm kind of very tempted to bump him up in terms of his personality up into A. And I think there's another kind of a wrinkle to this, or a factor to this as well, which is that when he does start to question his own existence and whether he's even a real person, or whether he even exists, or whatever, at that point he does exhibit a lot of maturity, and he doesn't give up. He doesn't say, okay, well then this is a waste of time, why do I care? Because he cares then more about these other people, and about, like, changing, like, being a force of change, that he just kind of learns to kind of let that to one side. So I think I'm after convincing myself. I think we do this. If we can put Kukui in pass, then we can put Titus in A. So here's the difficult people, right? Seymour and Jecht, like, making a judgment call on their personality. Like, I think that's a hard one. And you might be sitting there thinking, Seymour, it's what you mean, it's hard to make a judgment call on his personality. Like, I think, look, he's not going to land up here, you know, he's not going to be in this SABC or whatever. But I also don't think he's an automatic F. Like, I'm more thinking around this E level. I just need to kind of figure out in my mind what way I want to sort of justify it. Like, on the one hand, he has that kind of like Maximilian Pegasus, badass, ambiguously camp energy, which also gives him points, just like Unaleska. And as well, like Mayo, he's like a product of his trauma to a certain extent. Just like, but then you could argue that for everybody. Like, Waka still deserves to be in a D. He doesn't get like a free get out of jail free card just because he's a product of the society that he's in, right? Seymour, like, I think you need to remember as well that Seymour is just like the Albed were outsiders in Spira. The Guado were outsiders in Spira as well, which we always forget about to a certain extent. Like, up until Seymour's father married a human Spiran, whatever. Hume, or whatever they want us to call them these days. Like, the Guado were absolute outsiders and outcasts that were treated probably just as poorly as the Albed were. So, like, that has to be taken into consideration to a certain extent as well. I think we'll end up putting him in E with Unaleska, to be honest. I don't think he's, like, as bad a personality as these people. Yeah, exactly. They still got discriminated against afterwards, you know. Like, I think he's like in a kind of an E grade, in that he's still a psychopath, but he's not as bad as them. So I just think it's worthwhile having the discourse. I think it's a waste of time just to kind of like blindly say good person, bad person, good person, bad person, you know. I think when there was so much effort put into the characterization of these people, you know, it's worthwhile to kind of do that justice, or do due diligence, do due diligence by that, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Jecht, I think there's a reason Jecht is here at the like last like person that we have to sort. And I think that it's like he's probably the most challenging one, because even the characters in the game don't really know what to think about him to a certain extent. And all we see of him for the most part of the game is heavily biased by what Titus's personal opinion is of him. However, so we need, what we really need to decide is like how true is that, or like how real is that happened, because I think like for me, like my gut feeling is that like the fact that Jecht somehow ended up in Spira and decided to dedicate himself to Braska's cause and all of this kind of nonsense doesn't like make up for the fact that even when, for all that we know, so I think we have to take that at face value, he was an asshole dad, whose idea of motivating his son was to make him feel like he could never, like his idea of motivating his son was to make him feel like he would never be as good as him. So I think it's like it's a very difficult one to categorize, man. Yeah, like you said, he's an asshole, but he genuinely cares about his friends and his family. I think like for the most part we have to kind of judge him on how did he like express that, because all we really see at face value is that Titus's family life was difficult, and Titus was frustrated by his mother constantly giving Jecht a free pass, and everyone in Zanarkand idolizing him, even though from Titus's point of view, he was not deserving of that whatsoever, and that he should have concentrated more on being a more caring, loving father and a family person than being like a Zanarkand superstar or whatever. And again, I think like it's just this whole, even when like Titus was a child, Jecht just couldn't cut him a break. Like he made him feel like he would never amount to anything, and that's that's no form of motivation whatsoever. And yet, Fury, I think like you have to ask yourself, like, was it too late? And also, a person shouldn't have to travel to an alternate dimension in order to become a better person. Like, like let's just call it that. I don't know. It's just yes, he has a certain amount of redemption at the end, in that he's like, please kill me and like put this to an end, But I think he's like a terrible person. Like, I think he's like, actually, if we knew, like, if in our real everyday lives we knew this family, Jecht and Titus and Titus's mom, right? We would be like, Jecht is kind of like, and if we actually knew them, not if we knew Jecht, the blitzball player, like if we actually knew them personally, we would probably be like, Jecht needs to get his priorities straight, and he needs to stop being such a prick, if you know what I mean. And I, similarly to how like Waka's redemption does not buy him very much, like I don't think Jecht's redemption is worth that many points either. And I think Jecht doesn't even have the excuse that Waka has, because like again, Waka is the measuring stick by which all men are measured or whatever. Like Waka, like you can argue that Waka, okay, like in Spira everyone's a racist, that doesn't make it right at all. but it also means that his redemption is like his deciding not to be his worst quite a lot, because he's deciding to go against the grain of the society that he's after growing up in and developing in, right? Whereas Jecht is there's no sort of societal justification for why he's a deadbeat dad, like why he's an asshole. Like he doesn't have that same sort of excuse that let's say Waka has. So I think in terms of their personality, what like Jecht is like straddling somewhere between E and F for me. Like I don't think there's any sort of like unless somebody wants to come up with some extremely convincing argument, like I'm almost like I'm thinking Jecht lands squarely in the E grade, you know? And I think he deserves it. So yeah, that's kind of where we are, I think, in terms of ranking the Final Fantasy X characters by personality. That's an interesting one. That like like when you have like these more nuanced characters where you see a lot of their behavior. You know, you're actually able to make a judgment call on them a little bit more easily, I think.